question about rent control. What else can be done about rent control? So currently, 72% of the 237,000 rental units are covered by rent control. Single-family homes, condos, and units built after 1979 are not covered. And there have been a lot of stories about rents doubling. I mean, you probably read about all of this. Maybe this has happened to some of you. So what would you do about rent control, and what could Ed Lee realistically do about rent control?
Well, we are tied by Costa-Hawkins at the state level, and so it really does take a statewide political revolution in order for this to happen. We're talking about reforms for corporations for Cloud 13, but Costa-Hawkins limits us in regard to that. So, you know, one of the things that I do think about in terms of a pilot program is when I think about what affordable rent is, I do think that it is, you know, like the federal government says, it's 30% of income, and I think for a lot of people it should be 30% of net income. But I do like this idea of thinking about, how do we, I'm not afraid to do thought exercises about rent control and say, this is working, don't tamper with it right now, but is there a possibility of doing a pilot project of, can we think about how this could be more equitable without getting some knee-jerk reaction to it? Because I've been a renter, ever since I moved out of my parents' house. I'm all for rent control, but maybe there is a way to do it more equitably. And I really want to look at and see what Richmond does about rent control. Thanks to some of our allies, right? And so it'd be interesting to see if there, do you know if there's any differences between their version and ours?
I haven't read their version, but the problem that we have here is that the state, Berkeley, Santa Monica, and West Hollywood used to have real rent control, where the rent control stayed when the apartment became vacant. All right, you rent an apartment out for $1,000 a month, that's the rent, plus a cost escalator forever. All right, even if a tenant moves out. The landlords went absolutely crazy. They sued Berkeley. They took it all the way to the United States Supreme Court. They lost. All right? And then, having lost in the United States Supreme Court, they went to the state legislature, and they tried to make the state legislature say cities can't do that anymore. And they lost year after year after year because there was one guy who was the president of the state senate who wouldn't let it happen on his watch because he represented West Hollywood. When he was termed out, they came right in and they overturned it. So now you can't have rent controls on vacant apartments. Right? The state has limited our ability to do rent control. So there are some inherent unfairnesses to it. And that's because in the state legislature, even most of the Democrats are from Central Valley cities where rent control isn't really an issue. And we've just had a horrible time. So I'm hoping, that means we just have to be really, really creative about what we can do in San Francisco. And a lot of what we've been talking about, the anti-speculation tax, for example, was like, given the awful state laws that screw us up as a city, what can we actually get away with? So tell me, what do you think we can get away with in additional rent control?
Well, I think one of the things that on Monday there's going to be hearing about, what are they calling it now? Eviction expansion?
Eviction controls 2.0.
Eviction controls 1.0. So it's a package of reforms of our just cause laws to try to stop some of the tactics that landlords, particularly speculators, are using to get people out of their apartments, such as breach of lease. I mean, there was actually a speculator who bought a place in Chinatown and was evicting the tenants because they were hanging clothes on a clothesline that they'd been doing for years and years and years and years with the old landlord. But he was calling out a breach of lease, a violation of their lease. And there's all kinds of silly things like that they're doing, but they're managing to succeed in a lot of cases because people don't know their rights. People are scared. If they're immigrant, they're scared out of their minds because they're afraid that immigration is going to be called. And I hear that all the time in my office because I speak Spanish. I have Spanish immigrants saying to me, my building was sold. This realtor came to the door and said, if I don't leave by the end of the month, they're going to call the migra. They're going to call immigration on me. And even if people, and first of all, they make the assumption that just because they have a Spanish last name and you speak Spanish, you're automatically undocumented, which is a horrible, the racism of that assumption. But then on top of it, the fact is people are scared, whether they're documented or not. They're scared, and they don't want to fight the system. And I assure them that they can fight and that they don't have to leave and blah, 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 but people are scared. So we're seeing all these kinds of evictions, phony owner movement evictions, that when you see the notice when it comes into my office, it's like you look at it and you go, oh, no way is this going to fly. But again, people are scared to fight. When they do fight, people are winning against these phony notices. So what we have is a package of bills that Jane Kim has introduced, just to kind of clean up some of that and close some of those loopholes so that landlords can't get away. Speculators, I can't say landlords, they're not landlords, they're speculators, so that they can't get away with some of these tactics.
You know, one other thing we can do, that the mayor started to do a little bit, but just a little bit, is, you know, in San Francisco, anywhere in the United States, if you're charged with a crime and you don't have any money, you're guaranteed a lawyer. We could say that in San Francisco, if you're facing an eviction, you're guaranteed a lawyer, right? And what would it cost? $20 million a year to like fund enough of anti-eviction lawyers that every poor person who gets an eviction knows? It's not that expensive. I mean, I know.
Are they overworked, the ones that we have?
They are.
Yeah,
They are. But that's what I'm saying. If we had like $20, $30 million a year more to hire,
We can hire more.
we could hire a lot more. And honestly, you know, like reporters, anti-eviction lawyers are not that expensive. I mean, there's people, it's true. I mean, you know, I'm on the board of legal assistance to the elderly. It's horrible, but we pay our lawyers like $50,000 or $60,000. This is not a 20 million, I mean, this is not like high-end thing. We could do it with a little bit of money. And in fact, they were talking about that. And you know what happened? It got to the budget committee, and Mark Farrell, the chair of the budget committee, said, no, I'm not going to put any more money into this. You know why? Because all of you housing groups come down to City Hall with 1,000 people and bother me.
Yeah.
Literally.
That's exactly what he said.
That's literally what he said. So I'm not going to fund you. But with a little bit of money, I mean, you know, a fraction of what we spend on the cops and the fire department and all this other stuff, a little bit of money, we could fully fund a program where everybody who faces an eviction has a lawyer assigned to them. And that would stop a lot of them.
So now we know we gotta get Farrell out. The other thing is, once again, planning together. San Francisco, we have a lobbyist in Sacramento, and we have representatives in Sacramento that we have to be clear about. As mayor, that's what we would be doing, saying, lobbyists, this is your job. We gotta get rid of this rent control blockage that is not letting us operate as a healthy city. Mark Leno, et cetera, you guys, you have a job that you have to do. If they don't do it, we have to work to get them out and do it and get people who do that job. Planning, vision, focus, and execution. You all know this is the process. I think another piece that goes with rent control, by the way, on the issue of this rent control piece, a small example of community education and passing the word. The Archdiocese of San Francisco put out, through their concerns office, put out a little leaflet saying, if you're getting evicted, call this number. 606 London Street in Excelsior. A woman three families living in one house getting evicted, 3 of them handicapped. And they're getting, again, another of these phonies, probably an illegal eviction happening. Well, they got the sheet of paper, they called the diocese, they got the thing going, and now they're fighting the eviction. They would have been out last week. They're fighting it, surviving. But another piece is affordability. We, like Tim was saying, we tax the big companies. They can actually become heroes. Throw them Google buses out of the neighborhood, tax them, fund in a good way muni. We all get to, I won't say free muni because we already paid for it, but a zero muni, or as they say, free muni, we all benefit as working people. But what you got going right now is a double class within the working class, right? You get these super little IT buses for the chosen folks who've been brought in from other places, and the rest of us get not that much bad of a muni, but the rest of us get muni. They could actually tax these companies, and we could all have a great muni. So affordability is one more.
So why don't you all also talk about the relationship between the city and the tech companies? Because of this tax break, the tech companies are supposed to, quote, give back. And there's been a lot of studies about what they have given back, what they haven't given back. There's the new computer lab that opened in the Tenderloin, funded by, was it Twitter?
One of those guys.
Zendesk.
Zendesk has been a little better than some of the others.
Okay,
Still.
so what is your assessment of this relationship, and what would you change, what would you do? Like, what would you ask from the tech companies?
I already said,
You said
$1 billion for the community
Yeah.
land
What would
trust.
you say,
Well,
Tim?
I'm on the board, as I say, of this nonprofit legal assistance to the elderly, which is exactly what it sounds like. We provide free legal assistance to seniors who don't have any money, right? And it's a small operation. We got like 5 lawyers, right? So we used to have an office on Market Street, right near where a lot of the, right near Transit, right near BART, easy to get to. Well, the rent went up. And why did the rent go up? Because of the Twitter tax break. right? So the rent went way up. So we had to move to Sutter Street on the side of a steep hill, where a lot of our clients can't get there. Because they're elderly, they are mobility impaired, they can't get there. So Twitter, all these people, they have these community benefit agreements. You know what they want to do? They want to help you build an app. Or they want to help you with your website. Legal assistance to the elderly doesn't need help with a website. It needs money, cash, to pay the rent. Right? And that's what these guys aren't doing. They're all coming in and saying, well, we can help you. We can help nonprofits. We can help you come in and we'll send one of our engineers to help improve your website. That's not what nonprofits in San Francisco need. They need money. They need cash to pay their rent and their staff. And the tech industry has driven up rents in an area that used to be home. I mean, part of there's displacement going on all over residentially, but there's also displacement in nonprofits. That whole mid-market area used to be home to a lot of nonprofits that served the community. And if you are serving at-risk youth in the Tenderloin, you can't move to Oakland. It doesn't work. You've got to be where your clients are, right? So the tech industry has not taken any responsibility for the displacement it has caused to nonprofits. And what they need is rent subsidies. That's what they need, and that's what the community benefit agreements ought to be. None of this, I'm going to send someone over to help with your tech support. Nah, it should be, we're going to give, $10 million a year for rent support for nonprofits who otherwise would be priced out because of us. Right? And that's not, the thing that gets me about the tech industry is, I don't think most people in the tech industry are taking responsibility for what they've done to the city. Right? I asked all the tech workers to sign a pledge. Does that sign a pledge? You never move into a place where there's been an eviction. Don't buy a house, don't move into a house, don't even look at a place where there's been an eviction. It's easy to find out. The Any Eviction Mapping Project has this nifty little thing. You type in an address, and it will tell you if there's ever been an eviction there. If there has, don't buy it. You see how far I've gotten with that.
So, but there's another area to that piece, community benefits agreements. The corporations, particularly the builders, for example, the hospital folks that are building over the old Cathedral Hotel, they promised 40% local hire. They haven't even completed 11%. So through the Commission of Human Rights, we could actually, if that had any teeth in it, we could actually say, you're not getting paid until we see 40% of their labor is local hire. Name, last name, and address. None of these ghost hiring lists as they do in third world cities and they're doing here. So I think that's another area that goes to affordability, that goes to the area of support, and that goes to what Tommy was saying that we need to do starting today, not November 3rd, not January 1st, but actually continue looking at it right now, is those pieces like the community benefits agreement.
Yeah, and when we think about something that grows at the expense of its ecosystem or organism, that's a cancer. That's what cancer does. It doesn't know when to stop growing. And so none of these companies want to be thought of as cancers. I mean, these are companies that help to, SimCity is actually a pretty interesting thing that we could be playing off of, is that it's teaching people to be developers, right, of land. Google wants to be able to create these buildings of the future in their backyard, and they're not being able to build as much housing as they want there. But we have Balboa Reservoir, and we have a few areas where, why doesn't Google get to build some of their state-of-the-art type of housing, but they do it for the workers of San Francisco? Because they understand that there's a nexus between them growing in that region and the municipalities aren't responding to that growth in terms of housing as well. So we have to figure out how are we going to support our transit, how are we going to support our housing needs. And I think that, the people that work for these companies, they're young and they were raised to think about the ecosystem. They were raised to think about how we impact things, and they get it. And so we just have to speak to that idea and then hold these companies accountable, but in a way where they know what they're doing. They know that they could do more, and they kind of impact. They're data people. They know what they're doing.